The topic of my talk is recovering the evangelical political voice, which raises the question, did evangelicals ever have a political voice? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, when you understand evangelicals in America currently today as a subspecies, probably the largest subspecies, subsets of everything that particularly Timon and Chase were talking about in terms of being Protestants in America. Evangelicals are Protestants. Chris Rufo noted recently on X, however, it's remarkable that evangelicals are the largest religious group in America and have a relatively minor impact on elite discourse. Even on the right, where the evangelicals are concentrated, it seems that Catholics, Jews, and secularists have far more presence. Why? Why is that the case? Well, I was reflecting upon this a little bit yesterday as I sat at a conference organized by an Orthodox Jew and heard a Catholic senator give one of the best defenses of our American history and heritage and people. And I said, where are the Protestants? And we're going to get to some of them on the main stage. We've got one of us here today, Douglas Wilson and Albert Mohler. But Wilson and Mohler are kind of aberrations in terms of the modern Protestant ecosystem of the guys who would come here and speak at these things. So why? Where are the Protestants? Evangelicals have become, in the American political experiment, a lot like that weird uncle at family gatherings, full of strong opinions, maybe quoting scripture right and left, but somehow always getting sidelined when the real decisions are made. We've got the numbers, the passion, and the potluck casseroles to prove it, but in the conservative movement, evangelicals are getting put at the kids' table. Why? Well, I think one of the reasons why is actually something that is related to our Reformation heritage in America. And now, of course, the Catholics will say Luther did a nominalism, and that's why we have gay bishops. That's not the whole story, but we need to recover a Protestant political ethos in this country. But I was thinking about this, and Luther didn't initially want to break from the Catholic Church. He wanted to reform it. Ultimately, he found that he couldn't reform it, and so he starts a new church. England leaves the Catholic communion, and you get the Anglican Church. And then very soon after that, you get Presbyterians, and you get Baptists. And so this Protestant spirit of leaving a corrupt institution and starting something new is born. And then these Protestants who sailed across the ocean and founded this country, and I will remind all of our listeners here that America was essentially 98% Protestant at its founding. This is our heritage. You're very welcome here. We're glad to have you, but it is ours, and we would like at least some of it back. They started a new country. They started a new church, they started a new country, and then they went on to start lots of things like seminaries. Did you know that 7 of the 8 Ivy League universities were started by Protestants originally to train pastors? But this is so funny when you look at sort of the stream of Protestant movement in America. Harvard University is founded in 1636 by Puritan Congregationalists to train clergy with an original motto, truth for Christ and the church. Yale was started in 1701 by Congregationalist ministers countering Harvard's perceived drift from orthodoxy. So I was rolling this over, and this is all leading to a point, is that there was time and space for hundreds of years for Protestants to engage in what I would essentially call an infinite regress of institutional abandonment and build new things. And it was incredible. There was an incredible spirit there. New churches, a whole new country. We can't do that anymore. It's full. We don't need new niche micro Protestant denominations. We don't have another country to go and found. I am not putting my hope on a Protestant Mars. I am putting my hope in a re-Christianized and re-Protestantized America. And this is really, really important. I think this is perhaps one of the most important political and theological missions of our present day. Because if we want to truly make America great again, we're going to have to make it Christian again. And if we're going to make America Christian again, we're going to have to make it Protestant again in many ways. To reclaim our nation's soul, we must reawaken political Protestantism and not count on importing foreign hierarchies that clash with our founding ethos. There was, after all, only one Catholic signer of the Declaration of Independence. So fast forward to today. Evangelicals, as a key subspecies of American Protestants, have largely vanished from intellectual leadership in the conservative movement and the emerging new right. So how did we get here? Well, I gave you this idea that Protestants have been able to break away and start new things for many years, but that time, that clock has run out. We can't do that anymore. What else happened? Well, we had the fall of the mainlines. They went totally woke and liberal. And then we had this moral majority that sort of countered the secular revolution in America, but that moral majority, and I love them, they're batting 1,000. The slippery slope was 100% real. It wasn't a fallacy, it was a prophecy. But the moral majority focused fundamentally on grassroots electoral turnout. They didn't fundamentally focus on minting a new class of elite leadership for Protestants in America. National Review, run by a Catholic for many years. The current leading think tank in the conservative movement, also run by a Catholic. Kevin's talk was awesome yesterday. I love it. But again, I'm just saying we need to step back up. And then we had leading evangelical figures, everybody's favorite whipping boy, like David French and Russell Moore and everyone else, who sold out. And then you have people like Mark Knoll, who write a book that says, the problem with evangelicals is that, the problem with the evangelical mind is the lack of an evangelical mind, because Mark Knoll gets, bad feelings in his stomach when we say that we actually believe the world was created in 6 days. And so really, I don't think it was a lack of an evangelical mind, but rather a lack of an evangelical and Protestant spine. Too many of our churches have prioritized emotional revivalism over rigorous theological training, leaving us ill-equipped for the battle of ideas. Evangelicals retreated from the public square. And again, in conservative circles, we're a massive voting bloc, huge in elections, but we punch way below our weight when it comes to think tanks, policy papers, and elite discourse. The secular right, in many ways, dominates those spaces, or other traditions do as well, while we evangelicals are relegated to the values voter corner, as if faith is a side dish in this project rather than the main course. Evangelical leadership also made a bad bet on Donald Trump. I was a early Trump adopter in Washington, D.C. in 2016 at a very conservative church. And I was probably one of the very few people who was very happy to see Trump win in 2016. Evangelicals got a bad bet on Trump, and that sort of further drove us out of the ability to shape this movement. So what are we working with? How can we fix this? And that's the rest of my talk here, really. I've got 3 brief points on how we fix this, and I need a drink of water. 1 second. First of all, we're working with quite a lot. America is still largely a Christian country. We can quibble over what exactly that means, but the facts remain that a recent Pew latest religious landscape study showed that 62% of U.S. adults identify as Christians. 62%. That's a lot to work with. Maybe we could take some lessons out of the Rainbow Jihadist playbook, where transgender individuals are less than 2% of the population, and yet somehow they're wielding all the power. We have 62% of people to work with. So what do we need to do? We need a Protestant Christian political Manhattan Project. We need a Protestant Christian political Manhattan Project to reawaken political Protestantism in this country. This is why I love working with American Reformer. They're the parent organization of my group, Center for Baptist Leadership. And their mission is to promote a vigorous Christian approach to the cultural challenges of our day, rooted in the rich tradition of Protestant social and political thought. And so what do we do with this Manhattan Project? 3 things. We need, first, re-education. It's not that our liberal Protestant friends don't know so much. It's that they know so much that isn't so, to paraphrase Ronald Reagan. And that liberalized view that Chase and Timon and Josh have countered is really what's educated the current crop of Protestant political actors in America. And so I would say we need to educate them, but honestly, we need to re-educate them. I personally wouldn't be opposed to rounding up a bunch of Protestant pastors and putting them in camps and then just letting Timon preach at them for like a 6-week course and then re-releasing them back into the wild. But we need re-education. We need to teach actual church history, actual American history, real political theology, and not just feel-good sermons. And we need, this is so important, we need to retrain Protestant evangelicals to care about the country that they live in. We need them to understand. We need Eric Schmidt's speech broadcast in every church around this country to help the Protestant evangelicals remember who you are. It's like a Lion King moment. Remember who you are, Protestant evangelicals. So we need to re-educate them. We need investment in conservative Protestant projects like think tanks and policy programs where we can matriculate a new class of elites. We need to build a network of elite matriculation for Protestants in the same ways that Catholics have done for themselves. And if you don't like the word elites, we can just call them leaders. We need to retrain pastors to be civic leaders. If I could summarize to you sort of what my mission is with the Center for Baptist Leadership briefly, it's to make 1,000 more Chase Davises. And I think that would be an incredible investment. Obviously, I've got my spiel on how I think Baptists are really important to this because we have about 13 million of us, but you can talk to me about that afterwards. So we need re-education. Second, we need reactivation. So it's not enough to just re-educate somebody, right? You can train them to think more rightly about our history and our purpose as Christians in this country, but then you need to reactivate them. You need to get them back out into the public square. We need a Christian long march back through the institutions. And people get really excited about this sort of stuff when they see people doing it in, let's just call the non-religious or secular world. Secular is not necessarily the best term, but think of like Chris Rufo and Robbie Starbuck. People love what those guys do. Rufo is on a mission holding these corrupt universities, again, started by Protestants, accountable for the subversive Marxist ideology that they're poisoning our nation's schools with and our students with. Robbie Starbuck is on a tear holding corporations accountable for DEI and CRT and ESG and wokeness. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, we've got all those same problems in the church too. And we need people to rise up and drive these woke actors out of our churches. We need to reclaim our institutions. So re-education, reactivation, and the last thing I would say is reinvestment. Let me get a quick show of hands. Who here has read Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale? Okay, a lot of you have, some of you haven't. You need to read that book. This has been an amazing thing for me as I've embarked upon this project. The left cares about the Christian right a lot more than the Christian right cares about the Christian right. The left cares about subverting political Protestantism in America a lot more than political Protestants or even conservatives of any denominational background care about bolstering it. The left, George Soros, and many others have invested hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in infiltrating our Christian organizations. I mean, a great example of this is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, formerly led by Russell Moore. They have a partnership with the Evangelical Immigration Table, which is a George Soros front group, and they go around signing letters to Congress encouraging support for mass amnesty bills. Why do they do that? Fundamentally because of financial incentives. And that's just one example. We have seminaries teaching climate change nonsense and telling Christian seminary students to purchase carbon indulgences. And we had the president of the Southern Baptist Convention at one point in time encouraging people to use trans pronouns out of an act of pronoun hospitality. And that's, I'm just picking on the Baptists. I could give you plenty of examples from the Lutherans and the Presbyterians. A leading Presbyterian figure and minister said, 1 minute, okay, we got 1 minute, said, I am not worried about hordes of illegal immigrants coming to America because maybe that's God bringing the mission field to us. I mean, this has all been downstream of the investment of the left on moving Christians to their side of political issues. So we need people to step up and say, funding a political Protestant Manhattan Project is worth it. And if we don't invest in this, the left is going to eat our lunch. And so let me close with one Bible verse. This wasn't a sermon. This is a call to action, to re-educate, to reactivate, and reinvest in Protestant political America. But I want to close with this from Nehemiah 4:13-14. Nehemiah embarks not fundamentally on a pastoral project, but on a political project to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so that ultimately right worship could be made again. And it was this great combination of Nehemiah as this civil, political, military leader with Ezra as the pastor and the scribe. But Nehemiah told the people, as they were under duress, to work with their weapons in their hands. And this is what he says in chapter 4, 13-14. Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. So the call here is to fight for our home, the home that those Christian pilgrims, as Senator Schmidt said, came to and baptized and built. This is our inheritance. We should fight for it, and we need to do that by reigniting the Protestant spirit in America. Thank you.
Appreciate it.